Greetings, Mark Goering here, publisher of the Conway Daily Sun. And this is another installment of our candidate interviews for Conway candidates, both town and school. And today, joining me are Melanie Lebel and Shawn Baldwin. Melanie, Shawn?
Yep.
Hello.
And both of you are running against each other for a one-year term. So why don't we start with a quick introduction and why both of you are running for the one-year term and not for the three-year seats. Melanie?
All right. Hi, I'm Melanie Lebel. I am a mom of 4 kids, married for over 15 years now, live in town for about 17 or 18 years. I have 1 in the high school, 1 in the middle school, 2 in the elementary school, so I'm pretty aware of what goes on the daily in all the schools. I hear all the issues, and there's some things that I would like to help make better. That's
Okay.
about it.
Shawn?
Yep, Shawn Baldwin. I'm local to the area. Came from the Freiburg area and then moved over here 12 years ago or so. I'm running for the one-year seat because I'm not as well known to the voters as far as being in the school sphere. So it wouldn't really be fair to run against the people that are running now. I mean, they've been involved in these things a lot longer than me, and they have the name recognition. People know where they stand. People admittedly don't really know where I stand on a lot of issues. But my perspective is more, I don't have children in the school. I am a taxpayer who's gone through this recent issue, who's concerned about the taxes. And that doesn't mean I don't care about education. I do want to see a good quality education, but I just want to ensure that it's done at a fair rate and decisions are made appropriately.
All right, so I've got a list of issues to talk about, but since both of you have kind of alluded to why you're running, so why don't we start there? So Melanie, you said, why are you running, and what are some of the issues that you see that your kids experience that have prompted you to run?
So my kids have had issues with bullying, as have many others.
And like what age group are they being bullied?
Well, one of my children throughout all the ages, my younger ones have kind of learned how to navigate that and avoid it for the most part. But at the high school, it can get out of hand quick, and there's not much they can do about it. So I'd love to fix that.
How would you, I mean, a discipline, discipline apparently has been an issue for a year or so.
Yep.
So what do you think that fix would be?
I know that the discipline policy used to be a lot different, say 10 years ago. And
meaning stricter?
Stricter and more fair. It made the kids accountable for their actions. Now I don't feel like they feel accountable at all.
Wow. So how does that manifest itself? I mean, that kids can get away with doing what they want to, or go in and out of classrooms, or is that a teacher issue or an administrative issue?
It's a mixed bag of issues. My latest issue was in the fall of this year, and when a teacher left, and then classes were combined, and it was an unsafe situation.
Unsafe? What do you
It
mean?
was all ages and all sizes, freshman through senior, in a PE class.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was a substitute teacher that day.
And how do you, how does one, as a school board member, how do you address that? Outside, I guess, bringing it up.
Looking at the policies.
Right. All right. Shawn, you kind of talked about, you've suggested that you're as interested in the tax situation and the budget situation. Is that what's motivating you?
Well, I originally got involved in the school district arena through the IRAC committee, just as a community member, non-voting community member, just to give input. I do have a construction background.
And the IRAC committee is?
The Infrastructure Review Ad Hoc Committee.
Okay. Now, is that the school closing, or is that just the infrastructure?
Well, it was called the Infrastructure Review Ad Hoc Committee, and we didn't look at just closing a school. We looked at a huge array of issues and really tried to objectively look at all of the aspects that went into our current situation and what may be the best solution coming out of that. We never finished that, and I've been told that that's going to continue again after budget season. It got stopped short because they voted to close the school, but that wasn't the ultimate decision of the group. I think that work is still undone. But that's what got me into it. And during the course of that is when this tax burden issue came up. And
Now, you say the tax burden because of the reval?
Yeah,
or because of the budget?
Not the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to be clear. The reevaluation that shifted the tax burden from commercial to residential has, brought to light maybe some issues that we might want to look at. But that isn't to say that I think the town budget is out of control or the state or the school budget is out of control. It's just that we may want to just be a little bit more careful about how we're spending money at this point, because there's people that can't afford to live here.
All right, and that Iraq committee, even though that's kind of a funny acronym, is a whole lot better than the old acronym, which is the FUC committee.
Yeah.
I think we can say FUC, but okay. So speaking of all that, so school closing, Melanie, and you know that obviously they've been talking about it for a long time. The school board has decided to close a school. It hasn't been determined which one yet. How do you feel about closing a school, and which one, if you could wave a magic wand?
So I don't want to close a school. I don't think any parent wants to, but I do feel that it's necessary at this point. I would vote to close the school if that came up again and if I was on the board. I feel that just declining enrollment, I don't see it going up anytime soon, unfortunately. I feel like the maintenance bills are piling up and we can't fill staff positions. It just makes sense to at this point. I can't answer which one because there's so many different variables.
Like what?
Like location and where kids are, the travel time, and how the kids are going to be divided. And
which school do your kids go to? Primary school?
Pine Tree.
Pine Tree?
But I had one go to John Fuller for 5 years.
All right. Good. And Shawn, what do you think? Closing the school?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time looking over reports and going through those meetings and trying to whittle down what the right decision was. And again, that was not just closing a school, that was looking at everything. But ultimately, we were leaning towards closing a school for a lot of reasons. So yes, I'm in favor of closing a school. I don't know which one. And I think it would be improper for anyone to say that we know which one should be closed right now, because the administration should have some weight in the decision. The educators should have some weight in the decision. The school teachers, parents, everybody should. And that's why they have to go through those meetings that are coming up, so everybody can kind of come to a collective best decision.
And I think Kevin Rich is on the record by saying that he thinks Pine Tree should be the one.
I did hear him say that too, yeah.
And you can make you can make a case for both, either one, so.
Yep, I can make a case for all three, so it's hard.
Speaking of which, all three, what do you think? Mike DiGregorio's the chairman of the board, has floated the idea of building a brand new big giant school at some point and closing all the 3 elementary schools. Do you think that makes any sense for down the road?
If enrollment keeps declining, possibly, but at this point, no.
Too expensive?
Too expensive. People are complaining about what we have now on the budget. I mean, and not only that, it's just, I don't think many parents want that right now. And I don't know where they'd put it.
That's an issue. That's an issue, because at Conway L, which would be the logical spot, but that's in floodplain, 100-year floodplain,
Yeah.
and that could be trouble. And we experienced a flood, which I guess those 100-year floods are kind of like every 10 years now.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Shawn, what do you think about a new school?
This was brought up during that discussion, and I think we should have the discussion. Being fiscally minded, there's a scenario in which we get lower cost overall because of the massive amounts of disrepair that the current schools are in.
Because we need, I think I'm not to interrupt you, but it's sort of like $60 million that we've got coming down the road, right?
Right. So what I was asking for during that time, and we never got to it, was what's the 20-year projection look like for the cost of maintaining these schools? And because that's probably what the bond's going to be. And if we were to compare that to a new school, if it was the same amount of money, we had better education, better busing, consolidated staff, consolidated resources. The administration already said that it would improve efficiencies. That might be the better way to go. I don't know that. It's something I think we should just look into. And it doesn't cost much to look into it and say, hey, what are the pros and cons, and is this a good decision? And as far as the location, I think there's there is a couple places behind Walmart. There's hundreds of acres that abut that rec path that the state is going to dispose of soon, right across the street from the high school. It might be a good location to look into. The town gets first refusal anyways. I don't know how that would work with the school, but that might be something location-wise makes a lot of sense. North-South Road, 16, Eastman Road, traffic-wise makes a lot of sense. Location of the high school makes a lot of sense. Recreational fields galore, you know, consolidating sports. And if it's done for relatively the same amount of money, I think that makes a lot of sense to look into.
Let's go with continue with the money, and then we'll go on to some other issues. But it's always confusing to understand the budget, you know, the school budget. But this year, the voters are going to be facing the default budget. They always face the default budget and the school board budget. And this year, the default budget is $1.5 million less, which is very unusual. Usually, they're really about the same. And that's primarily because of the retirement of the bond for the new school, right? So voters this time have a real choice.
Right.
And the administration, the school administration says that if the voters go for the default budget, they'll have to close one of the schools this year, and preferably they want to wait another year.
Right.
So, two questions related. And other people say, no, you can just take $1.5 million out of the budget. You can still do the closure in 1.5 years, not this fall. So, Melanie, would you support, are you recommending the default budget or the school budget? And if it turns out that the voters do go for the default budget, do you think we'd have to close the school this fall?
So I recommend that everyone votes for the school budget. We need it, the kids need it, the families need it. The faculty has made it clear that it's necessary in order to take the right steps and do this the right way.
If it's a default budget?
Right. I don't know, because they've made that very unclear. Even at the deliberative, they said yes and then they said no. So that's not my decision.
Right.
I hope they don't, but.
Right. I think the administration is pretty clear. They think you'd have to close the school.
And then
the budget committee says, no, you don't. So you're right, it is not as clear as mud, as we say. Shawn, what do you think?
So as far as the budget goes, I think it does hinge on that decision of whether you close the school. So I'll answer that first. The administration has basically said that if the default budget goes through, they're going to close the school. Like, I think that's the way it's leaning. If that's the case, we're giving pretty short notice to make the transition. Financially, I want to lean towards the default, but I don't think it makes sense to force everyone to make that transition so quickly. Unfortunately, it's been delayed, but I think we need to support the school budget, wait one extra year, give everybody ample time to make the transition in an appropriate way.
Melanie, what's so difficult about doing it this fall? Like, what's so difficult about the transition? Is it about the kids need 1.5 years to prepare to go to a new school, or is it that staff needs the time?
All of it. Picture being a 6th grader, you're the big kid of the school. So there's certain things you do as a 6th grader that you don't do in 5th grade. When it's your last year in elementary school, it's special. There's lots of celebrations, you're a big kid mentor to the little kids, and you're just ripping that away from them. I mean, not only that, but there's so much planning that needs to go into it. You're going to take 2 grades and put them essentially in the middle school. You're taking the 5th and the 6th. So it takes so much planning, more than half a year, to get the kids right into what teams they're going into in KMS now, and that's just 1 grade. So imagine throwing another whole grade on top of that. It's a lot of work to pile on them when they already have so much on their plate.
Yep. Okay, Shawn, kids or staff, or both?
I think it is all through. We heard during the deliberative some teachers stand up, as well as administration, say, you know, they can do it, but it's going to be difficult. And you know, I'm sympathetic to the kids making a transition. I don't give that quite as much weight, because, you know, kids have to transition at some point, but it does have some weight. So, you know, it is all the aspects. We got to take everybody into account when making those decisions, and I think waiting is the best decision.
Outside of the budget considerations, Shawn, what's your philosophy on combining 6th, 7th, and 8th and changing it to have a real middle school? Yeah,
so again, we talked about that during the IRAC committee, and we asked the administration, and there were some teachers there that gave some input. It doesn't seem like a perfect world scenario, but it seems like the best situation with what we have.
So do you support, so that's making lemonade out of lemons, but just philosophically, do you support a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, or a primary school that goes to the 6th?
Yeah, I don't have children. I'm going to default towards what the administration and teachers say, and the administration seem to be on board with it. So from a educational standpoint, if the administration says it's doable and workable, and when I went to school, we did that, I didn't see any issues with it. There are some people that have a problem with that, but given this, like I said, the situation we have, I think that's the best case.
Yeah. Melanie, what do you think?
So this is another one I could fight both sides of it. So I mean, if you're forcing these 6th graders to essentially grow up a little bit faster, you're not keeping them little longer. I mean, that's a little bit of innocence that's being ripped away, which it happens. A lot of schools do this, and they're fine. But we just haven't been used to that. We've been used to having our 6th graders longer in the elementary school and not exposed to those big 8th graders that are more mature. And I mean, it is what it is. It will work. It's not favorable, but it will work.
So I mean, given a choice, you would keep it the way it is through 6th
If
grade.
we had higher numbers in enrollment, yes.
Yeah. All righty. Speaking of enrollment, one of the criticisms, and and I'm sure you read Bill Marvel's columns occasionally, and he's pretty much critical of the school, both from a budget point of view and from staffing and all that. So, but it is true that our staff has grown a lot over the last 10 years, and our enrollment has gone from like 2,000, whatever it was, 10 or 15 years ago, to like 1,550 now. What do you think about staffing? And do you see any places where it could be reduced, or is it just that there's more to do now?
There's a lot more to do now. I mean, there's a lot more kids that are in special education or that have 504s or that need to be there for safety reasons or one-on-ones. There's lots of kids that need extra help now. There's lots of factors that go into that and why, but I'm not going to be the one to answer that.
Why? Why do you? I mean, you've got kids from.
There's lots of environment issues, food, everything. I mean, there's a lot more people nowadays with mental health issues, and that is a huge part in it.
And you think it's the school's responsibility to?
No, I don't think it's their responsibility to care for their mental health in whole, but they do need to keep the other students safe when someone can't be in a class without throwing a chair. So extra staff is necessary.
Okay. Shawn?
From what I've heard, been told, or seen through school board meetings, it sounds like a lot of these positions are state mandated. Where I think staff could be reduced is in administration. So for instance, when the administration released the savings for closing a school, there wasn't a reduction in teachers, it was a reduction in overlapping principals and things like that. So I think $1 million was staffing reduction that didn't directly affect the children's education. So those kind of places, I think you can have some savings without reducing actual, education.
Yeah.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure, absolutely.
I have had actually 2 teachers come to me recently and say, I don't know why we're trying to cut the budget here and here. Administration is where we should cut it.
Now, when you say
specifically in the high school.
Okay, so when you say administration in high school,
there's a lot
what
of
is that?
directors. There's a lot of directors and just a lot of upper staff members that
like what about the
could be
liaison
condensed.
positions?
No, I think that's necessary, completely necessary.
So you think it's above the staff level, it's real administration?
Yeah.
You have any sense of that, Shawn?
I don't have an opinion
Yeah.
on that. Yeah, I haven't heard compelling information one way or the other.
Now, test scores, our test scores aren't great at a lot of the schools. We're below state and national in a lot of it. And, there's a whole philosophical argument about test scores or not. And I was impressed, and I always look at test scores as, that's a really good benchmark. Kevin Richard said, well, we're interested in growth. That's how we measure. And I'm on the superintendent search committee, and our candidates said the same thing. So I buy into that now. It's about the growth, right? Because you start here, you want to be there. Who knows? Everybody starts at a different spot. But test scores are still important. And, even some of the Ivy League schools like Dartmouth and so forth, they're reinstating their SATs. They got away from test scores. So I guess my question is, Melanie, how important are test scores and to you? And should we address them specifically if our test scores, which they are a little bit low right now?
The state test scores don't mean a ton to me. They don't. I think that if you took a child's average piece of work in the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year, and you compared those, that means so much more. because they're not having anxiety over a test, that it's their normal true work and what they're capable of, and that's what you're seeing.
But shouldn't there be a standard to, I mean, at some point,
Yeah.
it's one thing to work within yourself and have growth within yourself in your classroom. At some point, you are going to face the real world out there and other people are taking those tests.
I should have been more clear. In the elementary levels, that's what I think is more necessary. I mean, middle school and high school, standardized tests, yes, it's going to become necessary, and they just need to be more prepared for it.
All right. Shawn?
So I think what we're trying to do is ensure that when somebody leaves high school, they're prepared to go out in the world. And the difficulty is, how do you define prepared? So we tend to try to look for numbers in order to put a number on something and say, okay, this is relative to somebody else, this is prepared, this isn't. So test scores, I think, have a place. I just don't know that you should give it complete weight. And I do agree, you know, improvement is important, especially now when we've seen a dip in education with COVID. You know, there's been definitely an effect of on education. So it's hard to tell even where we're at, you know, right now. So there is a place for numbers, but I don't think that's test scores, but I don't think that's everything.
All right. So we are, as mentioned, I'm actually on the superintendent search committee, and that's moving along. But what would you like to see, Shawn, in terms of the qualities of a new superintendent?
Kevin Richards has done a great job from what I can see. He's very articulate, calm, keeps good meetings. I'd like to see somebody that kind of maintains what he's been doing. I don't know how to reduce the burden on him, because I know he's, you know, it's going to be hard to find somebody that wants to spend every night away from home and 70 hours a week. And but you know, obviously somebody who's going to do that is going to be passionate about what they're doing. So I don't know about specifically, but somebody in the image of Kevin, I would say.
All right. Melanie, what do you think?
I would definitely look for someone that has experience already, because we're handing them a plate full of chaos.
Chaos. Some people call it, I'm telling you, on our search committee, they don't call it chaos. They call it transition. I call it chaos a little bit, but.
Yeah, so it's a lot to put on one person,
Right.
especially when they're new. So I'd prefer someone that's experienced and someone preferably from a bigger area. So it's a step down, so it'll be a little easier on them.
I mean, the biggest, I've talked to Tony Simone. He was the principal at down in Tamworth, and he worked overseas, and he was a superintendent candidate years ago. And so I was chatting with him about it, and he says the biggest burnout factor in this job is going to all those board meetings. And past superintendents, even though I know Kevin, I've asked him about it, he says that, well, that's the obligation. But past superintendents have not done that. They've either had the assistant or somebody else is gone. And I'm not sure that Sue Perry in Chatham really cares. It's that important to go away out to Chatham for 6 kids out there. And I always see it as a, you got to pick your battles. I mean, where are you more important to spend your time? But anyway, charter schools. So how do you account for the popularity of charter schools, and do you support them in general? Melanie? Go ahead.
Well, charter schools are great for some families. Some kids just don't do well in the regular class setting, and other environments work well for them. On the other hand, our enrollment fluctuates so much with them because a lot of families go to the charter school thinking it's going to be great, and it's not for them. So then they come back, and we think, oh, we have lower numbers, but then they come trailing back. So it's tricky for us.
So, so you look at it as much of an administrative problem, just to deal with the fluctuating numbers, but you don't have anything against them philosophically.
Not for anyone that feels it's necessary for their kid.
Sure.
For my kid, not so much.
Yeah. Shawn?
So charter schools have been around for a while, and it's caused issues with our school budget because of numbers of students and things like that. But the bottom line is they're not going anywhere. They're going to be here, and we're just going to have to deal with kids moving in and out of the public school system. So we just, got to deal with what we have. Personally, I don't have a problem with charter schools. I think parents should have a lot of say over what happens with their children. If they don't like something in a public school and they have a choice, they should be able to exercise that choice.
Sure. And And how do you think the current school board is doing, Shawn?
I don't have any issue with the current school board. I mean, I think they have, you know, sometimes outside looking in, you know, there's dysfunctional school board headlines, and that's unfortunate. I would like to think that if I was elected, I'd bring kind of an objective, calm, rational position and maybe lower the tone a little bit. But overall, I think they're all good people trying to do the right thing. Nobody has any ill intent.
Right.
So I don't have any issues with them.
Melanie, what do you think?
I don't have any issues with any of them either. I think they do have all good intentions. They just, I wish some of those meetings didn't get so heated. I wish it would stay more calm. That's about it.
Yeah. All righty. Well, both of you are very well spoken. You know the issues. So if you'd like to take a minute and to just say, like, you know, why you're running and what's your most important issue to you, and that would be a nice way to end this. Melanie?
Okay. So I want to be a voice for the young families, for the teachers. I want to make sure their needs are heard, and I want to make sure that these kids get what they need, because, you know, kids need to be defended. They don't have a voice of their own in the school board. So I would like to be that voice, and I would like to try to change some policies.
Good. Shawn?
Yeah, I'd like to bring an objective view to the school board without any special interest. I think it's good to have a diverse mix of people on the board. You know, it's great that there's teachers and parents, but there's also should be some people outside of the school that kind of have a little bit different perspective to bring some productive debate to the meetings and maybe find the best solutions.
Good. Well, you both represented yourselves very well, and I wish you good luck, and thanks for stopping in.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.